Okay, back again. This one's going to be just about all the different things that I didn't know to expect at having a preemie. The first one was, like, we didn't really have a hospital bag. Again, it had been 2 weeks before. We were in the hospital for a day or so, trying to figure out what was going on. Everything looked good. And then she went in late the Sunday night before, and I showed up thinking it was just going to be, tests, keeping an eye on, maybe some bed rest, maybe just some hospital stay. But I walked into the room and they're like, "You're having a baby today." So those emotions hit hard when you think you have, in our case, 10 more weeks, and then nothing. That it was just like, I need to tell people, but I don't know what to tell them. What's going on? I'm not ready. It was wild. So with all that too, we didn't have a hospital bag packed. There was still, her hospital gown was, I think, in the mail that she was planning on wearing. We had wanted to take some maternity pictures, and all that just is gone. So no hospital bag, didn't really know, didn't get to do that. The other one is, just to go right along with that, is no third trimester. Those last 10 weeks we didn't get to experience. Yes, we already have another son, but this one, we didn't get that. That's more so my wife is feeling it more than me. As the husband, you don't feel it quite as much, but same, she was really kind of just starting to really show and obvious, and didn't get that excitement and plan and just all that anticipation of the birth coming up. We knew, with some of the other scares, that it was probably not going to be the full term, but we were thinking it would be, planned. We'd go into a visit and they're like, okay, on next Friday, we're going to be delivering, and get set and all that. And again, I just walked in to the doctors saying, "You're having a baby today." And then again, going along with that, just all the waiting. They said we were going to have a baby today, 9:30. So I go and start texting people, thinking it's going to be afternoon, after lunchtime. They said they were pretty busy, and then they came back and were like, "Nope, we're going now." Lacey texted me and said, they're getting ready and taking us back. So again, just the waiting, thinking it was going to be later in the day, and then it was right then. And then even with that, it was starting this medicine to help with different stuff. We had no idea what that magnesium drip was going to be like. Lacey hated that. It was awful. So, man, just be prepared. That magnesium drip, my wife says, is horrible. So that didn't expect that. That was not planned, and that was rough. But then still just waiting. It's gonna happen, but we don't know when. Then they say it's gonna be soon, but there we are, still just waiting for hours, trying to figure out what to do. Do family come? Do they not come? At our hospital, there was the measles restrictions, so no one under 16 was allowed in the hospital. So same, and then didn't know what it was going to be like in the NICU, who could come visit, anything like that, which rolls right back into the uncertainty of a preemie, because it kind of hits before you're ready and everything. You don't know what you don't know. Yes, the NICU doctors had come in a couple weeks before to explain some of what was going on, and like that everyone was going to be in there. It was going to be very crowded, but same, like, what's that going to be like? What do I need to do? What's different? What should I expect? Just all of that. Is it going to be very hectic? Is it going to be okay? What's it going to be like? And I guess things went as good as they could. He was doing great. All his numbers were great. Lacey's numbers were okay. There were a couple times that there were some issues, just again because the body's trying to figure stuff out, and she was dealing with, in her case, it was preeclampsia, or at least what they kind of labeled as preeclampsia. So it just the uncertainty of all of it, just the rush and uncertainty, not being ready, and everything, and it was wild and crazy, and just yeah, I don't know. And then kind of the last thing there was that we weren't expecting at all. You know babies are going to be small, but when they show the baby and he's tiny, they're tiny, and like even for a while afterwards, every time you look at them, they're just so small, and like no fat on them. You don't really know you don't go into the detail of what weeks the different development pieces are at. That the longer you're in NICU and ask the questions, you start finding out. But he was just so tiny and like so skinny, didn't weigh nearly anything, barely 3 pounds, and just it was wild. And again, just to see him hooked up to all the stuff, and IV and heart rate and CPAP and just so many tubes and hoses and equipment, because then yes, I got some pictures with all that stuff off, but they're not fully developed, so they need just a whole bunch of extra care. And for weeks, just being able to see him, with a mask on, never really taking the mask off, and how they switch. Our hospital, they switched between like a CPAP little mask or nose prongs. But then in that he has, a head harness and everything holding it on and bundled up real tight, and you can't do much with him. We only got, luckily we got this even, but we only got to hold him like an hour a shift, 2 shifts a day, like a night shift and a day shift. So yes, we could kind of go visit whenever we wanted, but you could only really take him out and do stuff for an hour at a time, depending on how they were doing. You had to, it was really based on what the child showed. If they were having a rough time, then you didn't get to do stuff. And just how scary all the different beeps were, and seeing the numbers and watching them drop, and not knowing just what all was going on. It was rough. And then we live about 45 minutes away, so the driving back and forth, luckily, there's different resources available, but you don't know about all that when, again, 10 weeks early, you weren't planning for any of that. That's not in the birth plan. My hospital too was also really good. They had something called Angel Eye, which was in a sense a lifesaver, because it allowed us to see a video of him in his little isolette, so we could check mostly any time, unless they were doing something, feeding or changing tubes or anything like that, then they'd turn off the camera. So we could kind of check on him. There was no sound, but you could at least kind of see him and see him moving and things like that. Otherwise, I don't know, it goes both ways. We wanted to just be there, but there wasn't really a place to spend the night. You couldn't spend the night, and then you're just standing there staring at him. Don't get to do very much, and you're just waiting. Just like they say, watching paint dry. You're watching the baby grow and breathe. So it it was rough. It was hard. And then on top of that, you know, you're going through post-pregnancy with your wife, you know, the significant other, and trying to drive back and forth because they might get discharged early, and then the baby's still in the hospital for a while. So trying to drive as they're healing, dealing with healing, trying to take care of them, but wanting to be there for the baby, but knowing you can't do anything. Just all of it comes back in again. Then that hospital bag, and missing out on that whole third trimester. Now that third trimester is you going and visiting in the hospital, all the waiting, not knowing what's going on, trying to catch doctors when you can, figuring out what the schedule is like when the doctors come, when they do this care, that care, when they switch this, when they give baths, all that. Again, the uncertainty, those first few weeks, depending on when they're born, just how long it takes for them to start getting stable, getting to that stable point is so scary. And then again, just the size. You would take a picture, see the diaper, like diapers smaller than your hand, it just so tiny. And we were lucky we were able to kind of help change a diaper or two, but just seeing how small, how little fat and everything they have, just kind of skin and bones, so skinny, so it was almost scary. They almost looked like an alien. It was wild. Nothing could have prepared me for any of that. And then just all the learning you're doing to try and get up to speed and learn what you're supposed to do, what's supposed to be happening, everything like that. It's rough.